Shaka is a public speaker, a writer, a social activist, and an entrepreneur. Shaka is a founding member of volunteer mobilization organization Cheese Kids, which in 7 years has enabled over 15,000 young people to give back to their communities in fun and meaningful ways. A mediophile, I'm not sure what that means. He is currently involved in media monitoring, book publishing, content sharing, and social media businesses, many of which are startup businesses. Previously, Shaka held executive positions in mid-tier, over $10 million type of companies, telecoms and media companies. As co-founder of an incubator, he's worked with dozens of startups across Southern Africa since 1999. He's worked with 2 of South Africa's mobile operators. He serves on the boards of Love Life and the Public Sector Excellence Awards. Shaka is a founding trustee of the Foundation for a Safe South Africa, as well as Action for a Safe South Africa, a nationwide summit on crime intervention and prevention. He serves in structures of South Africa's leading political party, the ANC. Currently, he sits on the National Task Team, interim leadership of ANC Youth League, in conjunction with his alma mater, Gordon Institute of Business Science, which is the University of Pretoria. He has co-hosted forums aimed at fostering dialogue amongst emerging thought leaders. He read for a postgraduate diploma in business administration at Gibbs in 2004. He's a 2011 Archbishop Tutu Fellow, University of Oxford, and has recently joined Africa. He was Africa 2.0. Okay. He was a 2012 delegate to the Academy of Achievements 50th Anniversary Summit in Washington. In 2012, he joined the Mail and Guardian's 200 Young People alumni. Shaka is a public speaker who talks on social activism, youth and leadership. He writes columns for City Press, a weekly newspaper, and Destiny Magazine, formerly a late-night talk show with Joburg-based talk radio 702. He's also appeared as a seasoned judge on youth development TV show One Day Leader. The reason we decided Shaka would be the right rainmaker for tonight in terms of the content that we have. We're 20 years into democracy, and we're all aware of the country's challenges, as well as how much we've prospered as a nation over the last 20 years. And there's been ample opportunities. The fact that we can get here and get together and do things like this is because there's democracy in the country. And when we looked at that, we're like, okay, black entrepreneurs are complaining about enterprise development or opportunities lack and circles and whatever. And why it's all like, that's freedom for what? So we said, like, freedom's a khat, man, you know? Let's really get to the crux of this. What does it mean? What does it mean for us? And where are we in the journey of entrepreneurship in the last 20 years? Is it on the table? Is it being taken seriously? As we are gathered here, are policymakers actually thinking the way that we are here? And are they actually recognizing that it's not just about SMEs, which is small business, the guy that opens up a boutique and is satisfied with it. We hear about the guy that starts a business to create 100, 1,000 jobs. That's about scalability, it's about growth. You're constantly creating solutions that are about empowering and impacting society and actually changing the game. And looking at that, we had to reflect, and that's why we chose tonight's topic. Shaka?
You know, we were thinking about this. It's 20 years since freedom, big freedom moment. And the mood generally, for me at least, and maybe it's just that I'm hanging out with cynical people, but the mood isn't like the mood in the room now, you know, which is very anticipatory. There's not a lot of excitement about this thing. It's very, it's naff, we on. Because freedom is done and you can't really eat freedom. And if you're right, freedom means possibly you have to give up half your company. This BE thing, it's never ending. Your kids won't get a job. There's affirmative action. It's been 20 years already. Come on, guys. You know, if you're colored, you're thinking, this freedom thing, I'm not dark enough. I wasn't light enough then. At least you have the freedom to buy a spray tan. And if you're black, a lot of us are feeling, yeah, but it hasn't really changed. This freedom thing, I think we've been sold a bit of a dud. There's a story that political activists like to tell each other. A story of this young boy and his father. The father has this beautiful car, Mercedes-Benz, and the two of them take great care of it. He helps his father, to wash it and polish it, and they drive out every Sunday. And his father tries to teach him how to drive with it, and he makes a bit of a mess, crashes the car, so there's a big gash on the side, and the little boy is heartbroken. But that heartbreak is nowhere near what he feels when one day they wake up and the car is stolen. He's crushed, devastated, He knew it was his daddy's pride and joy, this beautiful Mercedes, old school Mercedes. So, anyway, they get another car, smaller car. One day they're driving around, and he sees a Mercedes, a beautiful old Mercedes, one of these 80s classics, pull up at the traffic light, and it has a deep gash on the side of the door, in the same way that his dad's car had, except it's a different color. Anyway, he tells his dad, Dad, that's your car. He says, no, my car, that's not my car's color. He says, no, that's your car, really. The dad is a macho man, pulls over, pulls these guys out. They have a bit of an altercation. And the son, while these guys are arguing about it, starts chipping away at the paint, and he finds, yes, the color underneath was the original color of their car. It's their car. They call the cops. The cops resolve this thing. The guy says, I didn't steal the car. I bought it from so-and-so. The cop says, you can't buy stolen property. Guy gets his car back. So, as I said, this is a story that political activists like to tell. Then they say, replace the car with land. So, a lot of black people feeling like that. This was taken, was never returned. We're not quite out. There's this poverty, it's never ending. Actually, freedom's a gat. Right? And the thing about, this freedom thing, a couple of days ago, I think it was, 2 weeks ago, there was Human Rights Day. And on Human Rights Day, we celebrate Human Rights, Sheffield Day, then we celebrate this thing that we have, the Bill of Rights. But how many of us have read the Bill of Rights? Hands up. Oh, damn. Got some studious people. I want to hang out with you guys all the time. And the Bill of Rights, let's be honest, is really boring. Right? Dude, that thing could be cartoons, you wouldn't read it. But the Bill of Rights is pretty boring, but for many people it espouses our freedom. Right? Yes, no. The thing about the freedom is that freedom is contextualized by your oppression. So, freedom as you feel it is contextualized by whatever is oppressing you. So remember when we were young and our parents wouldn't let us go out and party till 12 o'clock at night, and that's all we wanted to do. Come on, Mom, let me go to the party. I want to go with my friends. They wouldn't let us. And one day they did. We got freedom from that oppression. And I remember when I was in my 20s, the one thing I wanted to do was get out my mom's house and then my grandmother's house. I was staying with my grandmother because I wanted to get out my grandmother's house because I wanted to have sexy time. It's really awkward having sexy time in your grandmother's house. And she's in the next room. Because in your 20s, you want noises. You want chandelier swinging stuff. You don't want. Because how are you going to go brag to your friend? Oh, yeah. I had up all night. And that's all I wanted. And I tell, a lot, I've got like 4 younger brothers, and they all want the same thing. They want their own apartments. And I think, no, man, guys, stay at home. I know better. Like, stay at home. You don't have to pay the levies. You don't have to pay a bond. You don't have to pay for all kinds of crap. You don't have to pay for groceries. Mom and dad are going to buy these things anyway. You're going to eat for free at home. No, we want to leave. I know why they want to leave. They want that freedom. Freedom is contextualized by our oppression. And if you're having sex at time, I don't know if you guys saw this newspaper articles that young people are not using jimmies. Everyone is towning all over town. Department of Health wants to introduce condoms that are flavored, Boerewors flavored condoms. Vos flavor on the Vos. Just messy. And you know what happens if you're towning? You might have an awkward moment. Bump into a friend somewhere you shouldn't be bumping into. Mary Stopes. And the thing about that is that 50 years ago, even that wasn't possible because it wasn't legal to have an abortion 50 years ago. So even that's freedom. There's a story that Stephen Levitt, this guy that did Freakonomics, the book Freakonomics, and then Malcolm Gladwell quotes him, says a story about how the New York crime rate drops significantly in the 90s as a consequence of the fact that abortion had been introduced in the 70s. So all the unwanted kids, as opposed to growing up and becoming criminals because their parents don't want them. No, that's the theory. Well, that's unwanted kids don't become criminals. So that was the theory. So he's saying, no, because abortion was legalized at that point in time, a couple of, 2 decades later, then, you don't have a crime, you don't have a high crime rate, you have a you have a de-escalation in the crime rate. That's freedom for those people that wanted the choice. So your freedom is contextualized by your oppression. Our Afrikaner brothers, they take this great trek from the Cape into the middle of South Africa. And I remember reading a letter that a young girl wrote in her diary about why they were leaving. We are leaving because we want to escape the oppression of the British. That's what she writes. The Boers feel that the British are oppressive because the British want them to live the way they want to live. They want to have the choice in having slaves. The British don't want slaves. British are a conglomerate, an imperial empire. They all over the world. They don't do slaves. They take you from this part, all right? They sell you dreams. No, you're going to work. Come. And then they put you there, all right? Then they take those guys and then they put them there. And that's their slavery. So they don't want this, cheap slavery, like local domestic slavery. They don't want that. Because if you have that, then you could have an uprising. So the British are like, no, we don't do that thing. The Afrikaners are like, hell yeah, we do. The Brits are like, no, we don't do this slavery thing. They're like, okay, to hell with you guys. You guys are tyrants. We want to be free from you. Until this day, you talk to Afrikaners, you could actually say to an Afrikaner, guy, give me your company 50%. And he'll be like, yeah, I'll do a BE deal. But if you say to them, we'll stop having Afrikaans in the schools, what do you think they'll say?